Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Available on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and at hero.co. That's HERO.co. Delicious, ultra-low net carb Hero Bread buns and tortillas. Soft and fluffy, high in fiber, and with 0 grams of sugar, up to 10 grams of protein, coming in at under 100 calories. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co. HERO.co. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.
Hey y'all, it is Friday, and so this is a special edition of Thursday Coast.
This is
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matsumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
All right, folks, our regular segment with founder of DailyKos, the co-founder of Civiqs Research, as we are awaiting the final counts, the final declaration, the final projections, and it may be a little while longer, but things are looking very interesting, looking better every minute for Joe Biden. Of course, here with us for Thursday Coast is the person for whom the website and the segment are named, Markos Moulitsas. Hey, man, how you feeling?
I slept last night, so that was a big improvement
Right.
over Tuesday. It's funny, as the segment started, I was just seeing the latest numbers from Georgia. There was a batch of votes came in from Harris County, Georgia. So it's like, you can't even take 10 minutes to say a camera, say, hey, what's up? Because these results are coming, and the situation is changing minute by minute, it seems.
Rapidly. So Biden's pretty much got this, right?
Yeah, the presidential election is over by any measure other than let's finish counting the votes and let's certify it and make sure that what we expect to happen actually does happen. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we should, as long as Trump has a mathematical chance of winning in places like Arizona and in Nevada, that it makes sense to just give it a few extra hours, maybe a day or two, to make sure those votes are counted. But we know, given trends, what's outstanding, all those things, we know that Biden is going to win Nevada, Pennsylvania, and we're pretty confident Georgia is going in that direction. It looks better and better by the minute. And Arizona's the wild card, actually. Arizona should not have been called on election night by Fox News, of all places, and the AP. There is still a chance that Trump may eke out a victory in Arizona.
How?
And there's no way to know. What happened is that the remaining votes were early votes that were either cast at the last minute or were actually walked in and dropped off at boxes on election day. Those votes are heavily Republican. Democrats voted early. So the later the count goes, the more Republican they become. And we've been watching these drops come in from various counties in Arizona, hoping that trend that trend doesn't continue. It has. So we are at a point right now. Last I saw, again, things change minute by minute, it seems. But last time I looked, about an hour ago, Trump needed to win the outstanding votes by about a 60-40 margin to win Arizona. He was winning them around 58%. That's how close. Now, it doesn't mean that the remaining ballots will continue at that pace. We don't know. This isn't like a traditional election where we can look at, all that's outstanding is Philly. Like, okay,
right.
we're going to win that. In Arizona, these ballots are one, they're from Arizona is only chopped up into about 5 counties. I mean, so that alone right there, you have greater diversity within the counties. You have, you may have Phoenix proper, then the suburbs, and then some exurbs, all of them represented in a single county. So we actually don't know where those votes are coming from, number one. And then number two, there's so many different dynamics, given that this is the first vote by mail election and the pandemic and Trump telling people not to vote earlier. So many different questions that it is sort of impossible to say, yeah, these votes will be more Republican or these votes will be more Democrat. And that uncertainty means that I think a state like Arizona cannot be called. Now, that's different in Nevada because while the vote numbers in Nevada are close right now, I think it's 12,000 vote Biden lead, there's about 120,000 votes outstanding, 90% of them in extremely Democratic Clark County. That is the county of Vegas. So there's a real chance that while it is close today, it may be 100,000 vote Biden victory when all of that is counted. Like there's just no path for Trump. And if they called Nevada for, I would call Nevada for Biden at this point, given what's outstanding. There's no real hurry. I think news organizations can wait, but that one I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about Pennsylvania. I'm not worried about Georgia because we don't need it. It would be nice. And we have 2 runoffs in the Senate elections going into January. So that's kind of exciting. Control for Senate will.
Is that guaranteed? Ossoff's runoff are we solid with that?
We're solid. We're pretty solid. I mean, okay. Right now, Purdue is under 50% by about that much, not by a lot, but all the votes that are left are all in the either Savannah or in Metro Atlanta. And that margin is closing. And at this point, I think we're pretty sure that Biden is going to win Georgia. And he's already, these votes are just getting more Democratic as we go. So there's really little chance for Purdue to find any place to get some votes and get back above 50%. So that's going to be epic. It will be epic. And we should all sort of get ready for this major battle in Georgia. But what it does mean is that at the presidential level, we all want that call that says Joe Biden's officially president-elect. But people are counting. And at this point, there's not a lot of reason for news organizations to make calls and potentially have egg in their face or get people pissed off when the vote is what's going to decide who wins anyway. And we're going to know that within the next day or two.
All right. Hopefully we will. Besides, I think as a society, people have been misled for years into thinking that everything was always decided on election night. These processes are not new. They've always done this. Yeah. It's just that most elections were decisive enough on election night. This period didn't make a difference. But for example, even as these numbers are being counted now, with some of these states you've even been through, they've still got a few more days, maybe even to next week, to kind of do a little housekeeping on what is coming in. And I think that I know at least one of them, maybe it was Pennsylvania. I think they've got even a little more time. But still, it's a strong possibility. We'll know what the numbers look like, and then a decision will be made. But why doesn't it feel, I guess it's just not official yet. Why does it still not feel like
victory?
Yeah. And as you answer that, I got a confidential message from someone both you and I respect greatly in media. I'm not going to mention the person's name. But even in the industry, this person was complaining that the mainstream seems to want to keep Trump alive, the mainstream media. One, they're terrified because he went off on Fox News for declaring Arizona. And they don't want to be put in that boat. But there's still something they get out of the drama. It's more here. He can still do something. And, especially, and this is not anybody from CNN, but especially CNN. I mean, CNN is still kind of acting like this thing is up in the air.
So I would actually disagree. I think the media learned their lesson, and I think they've handled it. The cable news media, they've handled this situation incredibly well. I mean, when their votes were coming in, they kept saying, we're not going to know for days. I mean, John King was like almost obnoxiously broken record by saying over and over again that these are preliminary numbers. The vote's going to go on for a while. Just because Virginia is red and Kentucky is blue doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. I mean, he was explaining this over and over again, and they kept stressing that nobody was going to be able to declare victory that night. And when Trump did, I saw even in Fox News, they were trashing Trump from doing so. So I actually think the media has learned. As I look at the coverage, it's all there's a lot of he's inaccurately said that he's won, which is not bellied by the facts. I mean, the media is fact checking him in a way that would have been incredibly helpful 4 years and change ago. Better late than never. But I actually don't have much to criticize the media for. And even the coverage of those stupid, silly rallies, that these MAGA people are doing, like count the votes if you're in Arizona, and don't count the votes if you're in Michigan. Like you're finally seeing everybody kind of laughing and mocking him and not taking him that seriously. So really what you have left are like the Laura Ingrams and the Tucker Carlsons or Sean Hannity are like the last bastions of sort of that kind of Trump support. And that's really, that's not going to sustain a major push. And you can see that. I don't see a lot of energy behind Trump's efforts to claim that this was a stolen election. And that was different. You can compare it to 2000. We're old timers, right? We know 2000. And it was the whole Republican establishment and media establishment. They were all behind that push, right, to declare George Bush the victor, even though he had lost the election. You're not seeing that right now. And in fact, you're seeing Trump roll out like the D team, the D legal team. I mean, Pam Bondi and Rudy Giuliani. He's not exactly pulling out the big guns. So I actually don't think that the media is overplaying this situation. Now, are they being cautious in those calls? Yeah. I don't see. And you know me, Mark. I'm a partisan. I'm following these numbers, these results. I don't see anything wrong in holding off those calls at this point. I'm pretty sure that Biden is going to win those states, but there's a mathematical possibility that he won't. And so I don't think, in general, that news networks should be making calls in states as long as a candidate has a reasonable possible chance to turn it around. So in Nevada, most of the votes are coming from Clark County. It's pretty almost, I'd say 99% sure that Joe Biden's going to win. There's that 1% chance that something funky may be present in those votes. And I think that's reason to sort of pause and just wait for more of those votes to come in to just make 100% sure, at least make it so it's mathematically impossible. And the irony of the night was that Fox News really kneecapped the Trump campaign by calling Arizona when they really should not have called Arizona. It was not a good call. As we're seeing now, there's actually a real chance that Trump may win the state. And what that did is it created it allowed the Biden campaign to declare victory in a state, in a Trump state. It narrowed Trump's path to victory significantly, made it a lot harder for him to win, and sort of signaled to that Fox News crowd, that audience, the hardcore Republicans, it signaled to them that this night was not going to go as expected. So it was a disastrous call. The Arizona call at Fox News was a disastrous development for that narrative setting for the Trump campaign. And that's why they've been livid about it and furious about it, because it really legitimately hamstrung them in a way that wasn't quite warranted by the facts. So, but But your original question, Mark, was, why doesn't it feel like we've won, basically, right? And it's because the way these votes have been counted means that our votes, the Democratic votes, are being counted 2 days after the election, right? I mean, imagine if on election night, Michigan would have been called. It's a 3-point victory for Joe Biden, just the way that Florida was a 3-point victory for Donald Trump. And what if, Wisconsin had completed its votes, and we know, okay, it's close, but okay, Biden is ahead. And Pennsylvania is probably going to be 2-3-point victory for Biden once everything is counted. Mm-hmm. Same thing for Nevada. If those states had counted quickly, then it would have been a different vibe, right? We'd be all celebrating this amazing victory. We didn't do as well down ballot, and that's something that maybe we should talk about. But at the presidential level, it was very clear that we performed, that Biden did well. I mean, he's going to have as big of a victory in the Electoral College as Donald Trump did. And if these states fall as expected, it'll be the exact same margin of victory that Donald Trump, except that he will also have about a 5 to 8 million popular vote advantage as well. So that's about as dominant as a victory as you might be able to expect in this modern partisanized world that we live in. So it's just the fact that this vote has dragged on, and the fact that the numbers that came from our voters are voted so late. And by the way, just to be clear, that's by the Republican Party's design, particularly in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. They refuse to allow election officials to count votes early. And so that was a big factor in the slowdown. But just generally everywhere else, a lot of these states had never done mail ballots. So they're dealing with an entire new way. And each one of those ballots takes longer to count because you have to pull them out of the envelope. And you think, oh, well, whatever, who cares, pulling it out of the envelope. When you have millions of those, that adds, even if it's 2 seconds, 3 seconds, a ballot, that adds real time and really slows things down. 2 is that you have record turnout. I mean, the turnout, we as far as we know so far, we have to go back, I think, 120 years for a year where there was higher turnout in an American presidential election. That's the kind of record turnout. Mm-hmm. Of course, you're going to overwhelm these election offices, especially since, once again, Republicans have underfunded them for the obvious reasons. Right. So that's what made some of these states sort of drag out, particularly the ones where the vote count is tighter. And then in Pennsylvania, the Republicans actively sabotaged the election officials to create this specific environment. They actually saw that they were losing, which they are. And so what they tried to do is they tried to cut off the vote or cut off voting when Trump would have the lead, and then try to claim on Wednesday and Thursday, go to the courts and say, stop the count. And you literally saw that play out. And the reason we knew this was happening is because Donald Trump told us this was happening. I mean, Trump cannot keep his sort of dastardly schemes private. And so we were more prepared for it. The news media was more prepared for it. And we saw it coming a mile away because he told us.
Yeah. What happened in Florida? How did the Democrats lose Florida from your point of view?
Yeah, Florida's Florida. Florida will always Florida. If we need it, we will lose it. In this case, we didn't even need it. Would have been nice because it would have sort of, I would have slept on Tuesday night had we won Florida. I think all of us could have gotten some sleep that night. Oh, whatever, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, who cares? Like, we'll catch up with them in a couple of days. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Couple of things is Trump got there is for sure, and this is something I'm going to be digging into in the next couple of months. There is a hidden deplorable vote. It's legit. There is a hidden deplorable vote. It only turns out for Trump. It didn't show up in 2018, which is why you had a Democratic wave in 2018. Mm-hmm. But it showed up in 2016 and 18 and 20. And you see it because Trump overperformed the polling dramatically. And he did it, in 2016, we thought, it was just education. Like, you adjust for education. And that helped helped pollsters be very accurate in 2018. And, everybody's screaming at the pollsters right now. The pollsters nailed it in 2018. And it won't be so bad this year once the final results are tallied. What it did do is it undercounted the number of votes that Donald Trump got. And when it all is said and done, and this is absolutely devastating, we're going to find that about 10 million more Americans voted for Donald Trump this year than did in 2016. It was bad enough that anybody voted for him in 2016, but that 10 million people who didn't vote say like, "Oh, this was like, I like what he did," really is distressing. Of course, we got even more new votes for Joe Biden. We did. But what that meant is that those tough races in states like South Carolina, in Montana, in Kansas, states that we might have won with a 2018 electorate didn't stand a chance with this sort of what I'm going to call the hidden deplorable base. And I'm really curious because it has only come out when Donald Trump is on the ballot. And I have some theories about who these people are. But they've only come out with Donald Trump on the ballot. And the big test will be Georgia in January with 2 Senate elections, runoff elections. We're going to see if my theory sort of holds true because Donald Trump won't be on the ballot. Will Republicans be able to get the kind of turnout boost that they got even in Georgia without Donald Trump? And my theory is that probably not, but I guess we'll find out in 2 months.
You have some theories, you say, on who these people are?
Yeah. I think there are people who are so...
I have a theory, too. I have one theory.
All right, so you go first.
Right. That's it. That's the only one I got, that they're white.
Yeah, but there's white people. And they're already voting for Republicans by 60-40, or higher ratio, right? I mean, we know that they're there. And we also know that white suburban women continue trending blue. I mean, there's a reason that Georgia is in that we're going to win Georgia. And one of it is that we got, Stacey Abrams registered 700,000 African Americans in the Metro Atlanta region. And remember, Mark, we were talking about these people back in 2011, I think, 2010. It's been a while. She got them. She registered them. And wow, look at what happened. But the other factor is white suburban women in that ring around Atlanta. You cannot discount these women have come through. And white women overall voted for Donald Trump again. But college-educated white women that live in these suburbs have turned hard against it. It's the reason that we made gains in Texas. We didn't win Texas, but Texas is moving. It's still moving in our direction. So these changes happen. So my theory is that there's a subset of white men who are so economically devastated, right? This is like meth country, that they have lost all respect for any institution. They don't think anything can help them. And so their mentality is destructive, right? You see this in the MAGA people with their their big trucks and their rallies and middle fingers to liberals. And they like that Donald Trump is destroying norms and institutions because it sort of feeds that destructive rage that they have. These are the incels, the gun freaks, the militias. These people are not answering polls. They're not joining the Civiqs panel. They're not answering text polls. They're not answering the phone and talking to a stranger about what they think. It's a big F you to society. And Donald Trump really, really reaches them. So when he's on the ballot, they will move heaven and earth to vote for him. But they didn't vote in 2018. And Trump was sitting there cheerleading in the sidelines, and it didn't matter. They did not vote in 2018. They did not vote in 2019 when he was begging them to turn out in Kentucky and Louisiana, which is sort of ground zero for white racist deplorables. They didn't turn out, but they turned out when he's on the ballot. So this is why my theory is that these people are 100% driven by Donald Trump, that truly it is a cult of personality. And Trump hasn't done anything to build up the Republican Party, right? He's always complaining about how they've let him down. So I think this is part of the problem Republicans are going to have, is that if he's on the ballot, then great. But when he's not, who picks up that mantle? And so that's not going to happen in Georgia. And I don't even see him. He's not going to campaign for those Republicans. He doesn't give a F.
Yeah, right.
So will those Republicans turn out again? That's a big question. And if they do, it's going to be a dogfight, right? It's going to be a dogfight. If they don't, then we'll win more easily. I'm assuming they're going to turn out just because we got to fight for every vote. We got to make sure that we assume their highest turnout so we can try to beat it. But if my theory is true, then we're looking better in 2022. If it's wrong, then it says something deeper about the state of America that is incredibly distressing, and we're going to have to confront. And that is that too many of our citizens are just racist and deplorable, and malicious and destructive, and we have to confront that. And it's not a question, Mark. There's a place for internal battles about whether we're too liberal or we're too conservative or this and that. It didn't matter on Tuesday night. It didn't. We had liberal Democrats lose. We had conservative Democrats lose. This is not an ideological battle for the country. It's a cultural one. People are voting for Donald Trump and Republicans for cultural reasons, not who supports Medicare for all.
And I agree. I had a more probably as much or more of a pessimistic view. To me, it's something really wrong with people in a country that so many millions of people who would vote for someone, whatever even the cultural reason, who is allowing them to die in a pandemic. So even if it's cultural, Markos, there are white supremacists. I know some, you probably know some too, who can be white supremacists in office, but at the same time wouldn't allow you to die in a pandemic. I mean, at least pick the white supremacist dude who's not killing you too in a pandemic. And it's almost like Jim Jones, except at least Jim Jones had religion. What Donald Trump isn't even offering, he's not offering anything but a hairdo and a lot of tweets and a rhetoric. And you're right, people coming out to vote for that, we have a lot of work to do. If that's really what half of America, or at least half that voted is, that they would vote for someone who literally is allowing them to die. That's pretty scary.
Well, they made death into a cultural battle. Right. I mean, from the beginning, it was those weak liberals with their masks and they don't want you to do anything, and it's just like the flu anyway. And there is a desire for normalcy that they tapped into. I mean, it's just that reality. And so even now, when we have record number of cases and deaths, once again, they can sit there and act like it's no big deal. It's like the flu, and most people recover. And I think Donald Trump being able to recover as quickly as he did, because he had all the doctors and all the experimental treatments, I think that fed into that fiction, that desire that, if it's just like having the flu, why are we shutting everything down? We don't shut everything down for the flu, which is, if you don't have the proper perspective and knowledge, and if you're not consuming a media that tells you about the real risks and not just dying, but the long-term risk of contracting it, then it's easy to fall into that trap. And this is exactly what conservatives do. And this is why it infuriates me that, Michael Bloomberg just went into Florida and dropped $100 million a month out from the election, and TV ads that didn't, Mark, how many years have I been talking about TV ads not doing anything? Mm-hmm. We dramatically outspent the Republicans, and it did not matter. It did not move. Once you get your name out, I mean, you throw $56 million at Jamie Harrison in a quarter, right? And he's going to lose by what, 12? Yeah. I mean, not even close, because TV ads don't move. This is cultural. Yeah. I mean, if somebody came out and attacked Barack Obama, is there a TV ad that would change our minds about Barack Obama? Like, we know who he is, like his strengths and his weaknesses, and what he's good at and what he's not good at, and what he did and what he didn't do. We know that, right? We've made a conscious decision, and there's no TV ad that they would throw at us that would make us go like, oh, I changed my mind. I'd rather vote for Mitt Romney. Yeah. It doesn't exist.
Right.
And so Bloomberg coming in and spending $100 million, but he didn't spend them on Spanish language media. He didn't spend them on black newspapers, right? He
Right.
spent them on frickin' the same BS TV, on the same ads that everybody can just discount because it's not persuasive. If I was a billionaire, first of all, I would start a chain of Latino newspapers in any market that wasn't already served, and I would heavily promote liberal values. I mean, everybody talks about Fox News. I think Sinclair is actually the bigger danger. They bought up all these local TV stations and they insert that conservative BS into the nightly newscasts.
Yeah.
Which is more insidious than anything. And so I would buy up Spanish language newspapers. I would create them where they don't exist. I would fund black media, black newspapers, black radio, and use that as an opportunity again to really promote and push liberal values and just reality. I mean, reality's got a liberal bias, right? As Stephen Colbert said. Then I would work on ways to expand our reach like a Sinclair. And you have Michael Bloomberg, who has a whole media empire. He could flip it like that overnight, right? And turn it into Fox News alternative, but he won't.
Right.
He'll
and
$100 million on nothing.
And the thing is that we begged for that. There were not, black-owned media ad buys to the extent that they should have been, Spanish language ad buys. And yet, once again, it's the African-American electorate that, in this instance, once again, that has saved the Democratic Party. Philadelphia, Atlanta. I mean, that's where the density of the black population has been. The Latino electorate obviously making a difference in Nevada and Arizona. It's interesting. Florida is a little bit different. But let me ask you this, though. Are any of these exit polls, particularly Edison, can they be accurate? How can you exit poll when 100 million people voted absentee? Because they're saying the support from black women doubled for Trump. I don't believe that at all for 1 minute. They're saying 55% of white women voted for Trump, even more than 2016. That can't be true, can it?
Oh, no. That's the answer, right? So one thing about exit polls is that they will be tweaked to match actual voter turnout, and they will be matched up to some data files to try to get a better accurate read on the election. So what you see on election night or what you even see on CNN right now isn't the actual final exit polls. They will be adjusted over time. The census does an American survey every year, and they're going to ask voters what they thought on various numbers of issues. That is actually a pretty good measure of actual. That's going to be a more accurate measure when you're asking millions of people these questions as opposed to a statistical sample. But yeah, I'm little more reticent about the exit polls than I had been in the past, not just because it's a poll, but also because this was a weird election where, most people voted by mail. So there's some vote, day of vote exit polling, and then there's some phone polling of people who already voted. And did they get that mix right the first time that we've had this kind of election and so many different rules in so many different states? Not an easy undertaking. I don't envy Edison having to do it. I would be a little more cautious this year than most even. That said, we know that Trump made gains in Latinos, at least in Florida, because of the Cuban vote. And the Cuban Venezuelan vote came in very strong for Trump. They bought into the whole socialism thing. It sort of really triggered a sort of personal historical story. Right. And they did that successfully. He also did well in the border counties in Texas, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Not a lot of people live in those places. Not a lot of people live in them. Not a lot of people vote. So when you look at the vote totals, they're actually minimal, but they did flip to Donald Trump. That presents as a double whammy. Is one, we got to really figure out how to turn up our vote there, and two is make sure that any gains that Republicans did are rolled back. And I have stories about Texas where people would say like, we're going in, we're going to go into Texas. And I'd say, oh, where? And they'd say Houston, Dallas, and Austin, and maybe San Antonio. And nobody was looking at El Paso. Nobody was looking at those border counties. And and I'd say, well, why wouldn't you go there? Right? That's literally where we're weak. And there was no answer, right? It's like, well, we'll hope to expand to the, down there eventually. It's like, it's just your way of saying we're not going to do it. It's because they don't know anybody down there. They don't know the markets. They don't have anybody in staff that knows how to speak that language. Mark, have you ever talked to Chuck Rocha by any chance?
No.
All right, so I'm going to connect you to Chuck Rocha. Chuck Rocha did Latino outreach for Bernie Sanders this cycle. And if you look at Bernie's Latino support in 2016 and what he got this time, night and day. And he can talk to, he's from Texas, and he can talk to you about those border counties and how little. And he'll say he had a Latino super PAC focus on messaging to Latino voters. And he'll talk to you about the billions of dollars that were spent by Democrats overall in the campaign cycle. And you know how much the two Latino super PACs raised all cycle? $10 million.
Wow.
$10 million. Which for a part of the electorate, then in some of these states is 30 to 50% in Texas and in Florida, Arizona, Nevada. So there is a real, I'm hoping, particularly since we won, so it's a little less stress, but I'm hoping that these Democratic groups look at this and realize, holy crap, like we can't be losing the Texas border counties to Trump. That's insane.
Why would the Latinos in the border counties vote for Trump? I get Cuba and Venezuela, but I don't get the borders.
A lot of it is men. There's a growing theory that rural Latinos may be different than urban Latinos, and there is definitely something in political science in the data that the closer we are to other people, the more liberal we become. And if you live in a city and you're white, you are, you're going to be very Democratic, as opposed to that white person out in the rural areas, which is going to be, 10% Democratic. And there may be a similar sort of similar dynamic at play, even with Latinos. Now, generally, overall, Democrats won the Latino vote, right? Even in Texas. So this is not a question. This is about eating into those margins. And if we're going to turn Texas blue, we can't be letting them eat into our margins with Latino voters. In fact, it should be going the other way. Like Latinos should be voting like the black vote. Like it should be solidly. I mean, the Republican Party is a racist party. What the hell are you doing, giving them any base of support? Yeah. But I think a lot of it too is there's another theory, and we've talked about this, is Obama presided over record deportations, right? It's just Obama was not great for the Latino community. He also promised immigration reform, and it never delivered. And yeah, you can blame Congress, but that was that's after the first 2 years. He did nothing the first 2 years to naturalize Latino undocumented immigrants. So there's a latent distrust of Biden. And there was in the primary, this was big deal in Latino media, a Democrat, a liberal Latino, basically asked Biden at an event why he asked him about that Obama's record on those deportations. And Biden literally said, if that's what you think, then vote for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. That literally is what Joe Biden said. If you question me on immigration, vote for Donald Trump. And that got a lot of play. And not just a lot of play in Latino media, but of course Republicans ran with it, right? Of course they did. Yeah. I mean, that was a gift. If you have any doubts about Obama's immigration record, then vote for Donald Trump. And then we're going to be surprised that some of them did. Yeah. So you have to, and it's surprising because Biden's strength as a human being, as a politician, he has so much empathy. Like, I mean, it really shines through, but that's one place where he's never had that warmth with the Latino community. He has it with the Black community, right? Clearly, like he is so comfortable and at home, and he does not feel that way in the Latino community. And I think that was a big, that hurt us in the end. And I think Biden's not the person to rebuild that, but this is where starting to elevate some other Latino superstars is going to be incredibly helpful in sort of repairing what I think is actual damage into moving Latinos into a more, and I'm not talking about the Cubans, like I mean,
Right.
kind of lost cause, but I'm talking about definitely Mexican Americans. And there's also turnout issues. I mean, the Puerto Rico community it's too early. It's too early for me to say conclusively, but I suspect that we also lagged in turnout with Puerto Ricans in Miami, because we always do. And the numbers I saw coming out of those areas, the Orlando area, didn't suggest a massive increase in vote, given that hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans moved to the Orlando area after Hurricane Maria decimated Puerto Rico.
Yeah, we should have been on top of that. But all good points. And so this is why people, Markos at one time was thinking about running for chair of the party. Not that he'll do that again, but people like us need to be at the table. It's still too much of this consultant class, and that's where the TV ads come from, and the modeling and the laptops. No. And I'm hearing from a lot of people that you and I both know saying that, we got past this and hopefully we'll get through January and get these 2 other seats in the Senate. But we've got to get back to the grassroots.
No, I'm into the modeling and the data, right? I mean, I actually,
but not that
data but the data says we need Latino votes.
But what I'm saying is the on the ground organizing, the registration of new voters. I mean, there was even one statistic where the GOP was out registering Democrats in a couple of states. That's never happened before.
Yeah.
And what built the Democratic Party into the Democratic Party it is today was the Jackson campaigns. And you'd go there's been a steady increase in Black voter registration in Georgia because of what was begun in 1984. And then Stacey Abrams and others picked that back up. You can't just rely on the electorate you had the last cycle. You've got to keep getting newer ones.
Yeah, and Mark, if you want to, I mean, the good news is Joe Biden's going to be president. We're going to pick up seats in the Senate, and hopefully enough to, at least get that 50-50 majority in the Senate still in play. We kept control of the House. We lost seats. We kept control. I thought we were going to gain. We lost seats. Here's the bad news. The bad news is that because of that, that crush of the Donald Trump hidden deplorables, that we did not gain state legislatures in key redistricting states. Republicans have control now of redistricting in more places than Democrats do compared to 2010. So this map that we finally got a majority, even though Republicans wrote those maps, now Republicans can come in and rejigger everything to dilute Democratic districts once again. So we are pretty screwed in state redistricting and U.S. House redistricting. It effed us. And even though we have Supreme Courts in certain places like North Carolina that could try to stop that, now you have a Supreme Court that is 6-3, and we don't have the Senate majority to expand the court. So we are at the mercy of that 6-3 court, at least until 2022, where we have a pretty good Senate map. We have some opportunities to make gains again, but at least for the next few years, things are going to be pretty bleak. So this is what happens when we don't win these down ballot races. And I'm not going to say in Texas, the Latino vote hurt us there for sure. It absolutely prevented us from winning the state legislature. In other states, it's just that we got massive turnout. They got massive turnout too. So I'm not going to say we could have done differently in some of these places, but their ability to get that massive vote out in districts that were written in 2010 to benefit them. I mean, for example, in Minnesota, Republicans kept control of state legislature, even though the Democrats are going to win the state popular vote by a lot, right? So this is not all, a lot of this goes back to 2010 for sure, but we were unable to squeeze that little bit more. And remember before the election, I said there was so much hanging on this band, right? It's like 2-point band. If we're on this side of it, things, it could, maybe we'll have a good night. And we had a good night. Had we had 2 more points, we would have had the best night ever. And we didn't get the best night ever. We got a good night. And that worked at the presidential level. It worked at, maybe at the Senate level, it actually hurt us down lower in the ballot. And so things are going to be rough the next couple of years. I mean, I was hoping we'd have a space to talk about great ideas and great infrastructure projects and stimulus and expanding the court and statehood for DC and Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico voted for statehood. And there was a moment, there was a chance for us to actually get something accomplished. And right now it's just going to be holding the line and trying to do as much as we can via executive orders, because now we're hearing that Mitch McConnell won't even allow votes on 2 liberal cabinet members, right? So he's already talking about how he's going to sabotage. So winning the Georgia special election elections is going to be incredibly, incredibly important. So much is going to be riding on that. We need to win those 2 seats.
And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. It's one state. We treat it like a national election.
Biden's going to win the state. Yeah, Biden is going to win the state. This is a winnable state.
Yeah, so I'm saying, me and you might need to move to Georgia for a few weeks.
Man, if I didn't have, my kids that I have custody over, like I think I'd be moving to Georgia for a while.
Bring them with you. No, really, man. Some of us, I'm already talking to people. Some of us might just have to go to Georgia. We cannot blow this.
Mark, if you can go to Georgia, go to Georgia. Anybody that can go to Georgia, you have a place to crash, go to Georgia, because everything is riding on Georgia. And this is a moment, I gotta say, I hate that so much is riding on Georgia, but the other part of me says, this is what I've been living for, like the last 4 or 5 cycles, right? It's this knowing that Georgia was a purple to blue state and not seeing it vote that way. It's the same in Texas. It's the same. It was the same in Arizona. It will be the same in Mississippi. Once we can lock down Georgia and we can lock down Texas and Arizona, like Mississippi is like my next sort of obsessive project. These are states that if people voted at the rates that demographically they do, should be purple to blue states. And so Georgia is everything. And you know what? I think it's important for Biden to win. Even if, we're going to have the runoffs no matter what at this point. I think Georgia Democratic voters need to see that their votes actually can change things.
Right.
Because in 2018, the message was they're going to suppress us into losing no matter what. Right. And Stacey Abrams said, like, okay, you did suppress us this time, but I'm going to work so hard to overcome that suppression. And Stacey Abrams is running for governor, right? Like, she never stopped running for governor. So that's in 2022. We got an important governor's race there too. But I think those Democrats need to see, like, if Biden wins, they can finally, I think that validation will be absolutely so empowering that itself may be enough to sort of propel these 2 Senate candidates to victory in January. Because it's a weird time to have an election. And this is on purpose, right? Because this law was designed for voter suppression. Ironically, it's hurting them in the Purdue race, right? Because he could have won normally in a normal election, but this is designed for voter suppression. It kept people like Raphael Warnock from winning the general election, because in the normal election, he maybe gets 46%. Then you have this runoff in a low turnout period of time, like January 3rd, I think, is the election. It's designed to keep people from voting so that white people could keep those seats. Yeah, that's exactly what it's about. And so Mark, I don't even know if any Black Georgian has won statewide since Reconstruction. I mean, I think it may be that effective a tactic that I don't think any Black politician has been able to overcome it. And this is going to be the year, well, not this year, 2021, January, right at the turn of the calendar. This is the time that we're going to change that. And we need to change that because it's our only way of saving the Biden presidency right now.
So just curious, in the meantime, Purdue and Loeffler remain in the Senate until after the runoff. Is that the way that works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if Ossoff and Warnock win, then what will the number be? 50-50?
It'll be 50-50, assuming that Alaska stays red. And Alaska is still in play.
Okay.
Theoretically, because they didn't count any of their mail ballots until next week. They just counted. They just counted their day of election vote, and I don't ask me why. It's one of those things. And right now it looks like a pretty red result. But remember, the day of vote was heavily Republican because Donald Trump pushed Republicans the day of. That suggests if there's about 60% of the vote that still needs to be counted in Alaska, and if it is heavily Democratic as expected, we may get a surprise. If you may remember, I had Alaska pegged as a state that Biden may win, as sort of the surprise state of the cycle. That was before I knew about this hidden deplorable Trump vote. Right?
Deplorable. Yeah. So
that may change the equation, but I think there's still a chance. It's a mathematical chance at this point that we maybe pick up a Senate seat in Alaska. And if we do, then we have a chance at a 51-49 majority, which would be better than 50-50, obviously. I wouldn't count on it, though. So I'm assuming that it's going to be 48. It's going to be 48-48. No, it's going to be 48 Democrats, 50 Republicans. And then that election is going to decide whether we can get the last two senators to get the majority.
Okay. So, folks, a lot more to be done. We cannot rest.
The cycle's not over after all that work. The cycle's not over. And if I can ask you all to do one thing right now, if you can't get yourself to Georgia to volunteer, donate to Raphael Warnock, donate to John Ossoff, donate to the Georgia Democratic Party, donate to Stacey Abrams' organization. They're all, one of the nice things that they can run as a ticket, right? So this is actually maybe I think it's a good thing that both the candidates made it to the runoff, as opposed to maybe there was the polling suggested that John Ossoff might win outright on Tuesday. Didn't happen, obviously, but I think by having them as a ticket, it sort of doubles that power, right? So you're going to have both their campaign organizations plus everybody's going to come down to Texas, right? You're going to have the entire Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee organizers in Texas. The DNC is going to be all in Texas. Probably the DCCC, the House Committee. What else are going to be done? Get them down to Texas, organizing at that congressional district level. And then Stacey Abrams' organization, everybody. And Republicans are going to do the same, right? They know that Mitch McConnell's control hinges
on that. That's true. They definitely can be there. Right. This is a national issue. Just to be clear before we go, the polling, you mentioned the polling being off. It was off in a lot of places. Are you saying that the polling was off because of the hidden deplorables?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my early theory. I reserve the right when we talk next week, after I've had more of a chance to look at the numbers and more of the results are going to come in, and I will have more sleep under my belt. And people are going to be doing analysis. I may change my mind, but right now that seems to be the case. Now, here's the fun thing. Both Warnock and Ossoff had big runoff leads when we polled those. So even if you tighten by the amount that we missed on the general election,
right,
they are still ahead. Now, things are different. The dynamics are different. Trump lost. Will that demotivate Republicans to not turn out? Will it get them angrier? Like, there's so much, right? Like, who knows? So there's a lot in question, but it looked really good early on. And speaking of polling, 2018, the pollsters got it right. 2016 and 20, they didn't. And Trump overperformed at the top of the ticket. Right. In our polling, he did about 2 points better than what we polled. And that doesn't sound like much, but it actually, it makes a big difference in some of those margins. That is, the question is, are they going to be able to get that turnout? Is January 3rd going to be like the 2018 election where the pollsters really got a good read on it? Or is it going to be like 16 and 20 when Trump skewed it? Because Trump is a phenomenon. He is a phenomenon. He can consistently overperform what polling that should otherwise work. He breaks it because he gets these hidden deplorables out. Yeah. DailyKos.com, Civiqs with a Q, and Civiqs is going to stays up and running year round. So check it out.
And if you want to be a part of the sample too, check it out.
Yep.
Civiqs.com. That's Thursday Coast for today, folks. Next time we chat, maybe the presidential election will be fully resolved, but we'll see. That's still
we're gonna have Trump here on the sideline screaming about it, but
right.
But the word is that he's gonna announce he's running again for 2024. So
you think he's really gonna do that? You think he'll really do that?
I always thought that given the opportunity, he would absolutely do it. And now we know that he's been talking about it. His problem, he's got two problems. He needs money. He's broke. And so if he has a campaign, he can keep the grift going, right? He can keep charging all those hotel rooms at Mar-a-Lago. He can charge that all to the campaign. That's so GOP donors can keep just funding his lifestyle. So he needs to keep that grift going. The other option would be to start a media organization, but has he ever surrounded himself with anybody that knows what they're doing? I mean, literally, like he bankrupted a casino because he put Ivana in charge.
Yeah.
The casino opened up, the slot machines didn't work. Like that's his record because he doesn't want people around him to actually know what they're doing. He wants people that are psychophants. And
he's not going to put smart people to run it and him stay out of it. He's got to get in and muck it up. So you're right.
Yep. Yeah, somebody might actually write a good article about somebody. You know, he got pissed off at Fosse when people started writing good articles about Fosse. Like nobody gets a spotlight in his world. So I don't think that's going to happen. Now, of course, the problem he has is that he's going to spend the next 4 years fending off all sorts of lawsuits and investigations, and he can't part himself out of it because a lot of it's all coming out of not a lot of it is coming out of New York, where he can't protect himself with he
might be in jail in 4 years.
Right. So that's another.
Won't he be 80 years old?
Yeah, I mean, he don't care about that. Yeah, so he might not even be alive. There's that piece because he's not a healthy individual. And then let's not forget that he owes $400 million that he is personally liable, that he's personally guaranteed. And he doesn't have that money. It just doesn't exist. So I think there's a non-zero chance that he's in Russia or Saudi Arabia declaring political asylum within the next 5 months because he doesn't want to pay his debts and he doesn't want to face the music and all those legal challenges. So he ain't going to be running for president if he's hiding out in Saudi Arabia. So it's actually I'm looking forward to the day where I can look about news with Donald Trump and it's like it's funny and it's invigorating and it's where's he hiding to or who's suing him now or what lawsuit did he lose, as opposed to how many more kids has he put in jail and all the other horrible things that he's done. Yeah.
Markos, Moulitsas, DailyKos.com. We'll talk next week. Markos.
Always a pleasure.
Thank
you. I'm so glad. Mark, at what point did you think that Joe Biden was going to lose? Because I did. There was that point. Florida goes. Yeah. And I thought, here we go again. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't go through 4 more years of this.
Yeah.
And that's why I couldn't sleep that night. And that's why it was 2:00 my time when Milwaukee came in Wisconsin and it flipped.
Yeah. Never fully gave up, but I was with bated breath all night, just watching. I couldn't give up, but I was like tormented, with anxiety. And if Wisconsin hadn't done what it had done, I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah.
And this country would not survive. But again, my focus was still so much on the despair of knowing that we live in a country where that many people would vote for someone like that. Something's wrong with us, Markos.
Not just the existing 2016 voters, but the ones who decided to either vote for him, who hadn't voted, which may be about 6 to 10 million new people that voted for him that hadn't even voted before, that looked at that and said, that's what I want to be part of. We have some serious work to do as a country to deal with that ingrained malevolent level of racial hostility, because that's what that was.
And that's a disease worse than COVID, y'all. And that's
and I will say, and I know there was no bigger partisan for Elizabeth Warren than me, and I never hid that.
Right.
I actually don't think anybody but Joe Biden could have probably won Tuesday.
I think you're right. Well, we kind of batted that around. I mean, it might take people talking about old white dude. But maybe you needed an old white dude against an old white dude in this climate,
with Trump's ability to pull out this sort of hidden, deplorable vote, right? Because Warren or Harris, God bless them, but just we didn't win by that much. And few points here and there, that map looks a lot different. And I know South Carolina Black community said we ain't taking no chances, and I think in the end they were right.
But again, to be clear, though, these polls are still saying that the white women vote went up for him. Is that really? Do you believe that?
I would not doubt it, because there is the white women in the suburbs absolutely shifted. Like, that's undoubted. There's no doubt about that, because we have seen that in the election results. There is no way that Democrats win Georgia without the massive shift. Cobb County, right? It's not a black county, it's a white county. Huge shifts in Democratic performance in places like Cobb. The suburbs of Dallas, the suburbs of Houston, they all moved dramatically. Even what's the county outside of Detroit? There's a county outside Detroit, totally white. No,
it's not Wayne.
Yeah, Wayne.
It's Wayne. Okay.
I think I think he flipped Wayne. I think Wayne went in our direction. Right. No, Wayne is Detroit proper. I might be thinking of Oakland, but anyway,
it's Oakland. Okay,
yeah,
so that's it.
Huge gains in the suburbs around Detroit, and even though the Milwaukee suburbs remain pretty red, they used to be blood red. So we're seeing shifts of 6 to 10 points in those counties. And given that that Biden only won Wisconsin by, I think 30,000 votes in the end. I think it's about 22,000 votes is the final margin. That was those suburban white women, and not to take anything away from the numbers in Milwaukee, because Milwaukee came through big, right? So none of this is to say that the black vote and the Latino vote weren't important, right? This is just to say that we did not win this election. They were all part of this coalition, right? So you can say we don't win without blacks, we don't win without Latinos, but we don't win without suburban white women flipping the way they did. And because Trump ran up the margins even more in rural districts, right? Like, he really squeezed out that hidden deplorable vote. So we needed to make it up elsewhere, and we did in the suburbs and in the cities. Is there enough hidden Trump deplorable white women? They exist, because we've seen plenty of videos, right? We've seen all the Karens, right? All the Karens, they're all voting for Donald Trump.
You just retweeted one this afternoon. I saw.
Oh my God! She's a elections commissioner in Mississippi who was gotten in the face of a woman who was just waving a sign for her candidate. A black woman wailed on her because she got all up in her face.
Right.
So those people exist. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. I also wouldn't be surprised that they adjust those numbers as they start aligning the exit polls with the actual election results. Right. And we have a good idea of who voted in states because of how much data plays into tracking votes and individual voters. And just looking at the voter list, you can see who voted, because that's a public record. And then you can match that up with the demographic data that people have in the voter file, and you can get a good idea of who voted and how they voted. So I think we're going to have, within the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to have a much better view of those numbers than we do today out of what is just another poll. And not just another poll, Mark, like we talked about, a weird one, right? Because you have people who already voted, and then the people who voted day off, and so there's too many different ways to vote, and I don't think any pollster is really fully prepared to deal with that, particularly the first time it's happened.
Yeah. Okay. Thursday Ghost, Markos, Moulitsas, Civiqs with a Q, DailyKos.com. Thanks as always, buddy. Okay.
Thank you. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll talk next week. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, subscribe, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.